What is the Christian way of dealing with adversity, suffering, challenges, problems? Is there a Christian way of responding to that? And what is that? In the world that we are living today, it has become clear that we are going to face various kinds of adversities, various kinds of challenges and problems, difficulties, and even perhaps sometimes suffering. It's inevitable. You can't escape it. We are not living in heaven, we are living on earth where these things are inevitable. You've got to face at some point or time, you've got to face these problems, adversities, difficulties, sufferings even perhaps sometimes. We can divide all people into three groups. One group is about to face a problem. One group is right in the middle of a problem, and another group is coming out of a problem. All of us will fit into one of those three categories. Either we're about to face a new problem, or we're right in the middle of a problem, or we are trying to come out, or we're on the way out of a problem. It's inevitable. And we face it and we end up responding to it. That also is inevitable. We end up giving some kind of response, reacting in some way to these problems, to these challenges in life. We end up dealing with them in some way. The question is, how? What is that way? Are we going to respond with the Christian way? Are we going to respond with the worldly way? Are we going to respond however we feel like responding, the natural response that comes? Or are we going to respond with the Christian way? There is a Christian way of responding to adversity and suffering. The New Testament teaches it very clearly, again and again in various places. This is what we began to see from an important passage. Let's go there again. James chapter 1, verse 2 to 4. I want to read it again and remind you quickly of what we saw and then move on, build from there. James chapter 1, verse 2 to 4. Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. We saw that James is teaching us the Christian way of how to respond, how to react, how to approach trials, problems, difficulties, adversity, whatever you want to call it. How should we react? How should we respond? What is the Christian way? We should count it all joy when we face all kinds of trials. We should respond how? We should count it all joy. We should count it pure joy. Now that sounds ridiculous to hear if you're hearing it for the first time, but then if you look closely, like we did last week, you will see that James gives us the reason why we can count it all joy. When we know that it will end good for us, when we know that it will lead to a good ending for us, we can count it all joy. Remember that good ending, how James tells us to don't just look at the problem as a problem, but rather as a test. He says, knowing that the testing of your faith, this is a test, and you're going to pass this test, and not only that, it's going to produce something new inside of you which was never there before, patience or steadfastness or endurance. When you know that this test, not just a problem, but a test will end up producing something new, an amazing quality on the inside of you, endurance, steadfastness, and not only that, if you allow the process to continue, if you respect the process, if you honor the process and don't just get bitter and angry and react in the wrong way, but rather allow God to use it for your good, if you let it happen the way it's meant to happen, the way God wants it to happen, it will actually end up producing something even bigger than steadfastness. Let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. Not only patience, but other qualities. I told you last week, it's talking about the inward development of character. Our nature, our character coming to its full development and maturity, lacking in nothing, perfect and complete. Full spiritual maturity, that's what it's talking about. James is saying, count it all joy, knowing that this terrible looking thing is actually Going to be the atmosphere in which God is going to make something good come out of this. Something good is going to get produced inside of you. This is going to that good ending. Know that, realize that, and count it all joy. We explained this in detail last week, and I think you would have understood it to a certain extent. What next? Well, it's one thing to explain it. It's one thing for you to understand it and say, okay, yeah, I can see, okay, yeah, how James is thinking, and this is the logic, and this is how we can count it joy. It's one thing to say that, but it's yet another thing to actually accept this truth deep down in your heart. Bible truth is not just to be understood, but actually accepted. Your heart should nod and say, yeah. And then you actually should put it into practice in life. It's one thing to hear it, understand and say, I got it, I think I understand it. But it's another thing for you to accept it deep down in your heart, be convinced of it, and then put it into practice in your life. That is very difficult, my friend, actually. That's real difficult if you think about it, especially for people who are in the middle of problems. It's very difficult for them to count it all joy. People in the middle of a problem, when they hear statements like this, they may respond like this, what do you mean count it all joy? Do you know what I'm going through? Do you know my pain, my suffering, my heartache? Do you even have any idea what I'm in the middle of? How can you say count it all joy? What do you mean this is going to end well and produce this and that and the other? You wouldn't be talking like this if you knew what I'm going through. That's the kind of natural response that comes from us because we go through pain and things like that, right? If you're in the middle of a trial, even if this makes sense to you, even if you understand it, even if you get it, right, and even if you want to accept it, actually putting into practice, it's still difficult because there are several practical hindrances, practical obstacles. If you try to take this truth, this Christian way, James gives us the Christian way very clearly in verse 2-4. He says, here's the Christian way, this is the Christian way, follow it. Count it all joy, knowing this truth. Knowing it's going to end good for you, right? But to take that and to put it to practice, even if I want to put it into practice, there are several things that come in the way, try to hinder us, stop us, several obstacles, practical difficulties. It's not easy to put it into practice. James knows this. He is a very practical teacher. The book of James is probably the most practical book in the New Testament. If you read it, it begins like this, but if you keep reading, it gets more and more practical. It's about practical living, really. And he's a very practical teacher. He thinks very practically. He's sometimes harsh, but he thinks very practically. And so in verse 2-4, he has clearly taught the Christian way, but then he realizes it's going to be real difficult for the people, at least some people, to, one, accept it, be convinced of it, and really accept it in the bottom of their heart, and actually put it into practice. That's another story. He recognizes the practical difficulties associated with that. And therefore, what does he do? In the next verse, he addresses that. Verse 5. After giving us the Christian way, look at verse 5. If any of you lacks wisdom, everybody say wisdom. If any of you lacks, why does he talk about wisdom next? Immediately after giving us the Christian way, here's the Christian way. Why does he talk about wisdom? Because this subject of wisdom is so wide, so deep, is so broad in scope that within that one subject of wisdom, he is trying to address almost all of the practical difficulties and obstacles that try to hinder us from actually putting into practice the Christian way. Wisdom is a very rich word in the Bible, right? It's very, very deep in meaning, very broad. Its scope is huge. It covers everything, almost every practical hindrance and obstacle that prevents you from actually taking this teaching in verse 2-4, counting it all joy, and actually experiencing it, putting it into practice. Anything that prevents you is covered under wisdom. Almost anything. That's the beauty of this word wisdom. What James is doing is basically, he's a wonderful practical teacher, and he recognizes people are going to have all kinds of practical difficulties trying to put this into practice. And so with all that in mind, he finds a simple way to talk about it. he reduces all the many different complications and complexities and different practical difficulties into one simple word, wisdom. Everybody say wisdom. That's it. He makes it simple for us. He says wisdom, but there's so much in that. He's thinking of many possibilities, many varied complications. As he makes what is very complex very simple. Something is very complex, but James finds a way to present it very simple, and he says, here's the problem. We lack wisdom. Why we are not able to take the Christian way and actually put it into practice is we lack wisdom. And when he says that, he's thinking of so many different things that are wrong. So what we're going to try to do today is we're going to try to understand this problem, and then we're going to look at the solution. What is the problem? The problem in one sense is many practical difficulties. Trying to put this into practice, there's so many things that stand in our way, right? But from James, if you look at it from a simple point of view, there's only one difficulty. We lack wisdom. Those who lack wisdom are the ones who will find it difficult to actually put this into practice. Put what into practice? The Christian way taught in verse 2 to 4. Those who lack wisdom are the ones who will find it difficult to count it all joy. That's the problem. So we'll look at the problem first, and then we'll look at the solution. So we're going to look at wisdom, not wisdom in general, but wisdom in the midst of trials, wisdom in the midst of suffering, wisdom in the midst of problems. All right, so let's begin by trying to understand how wisdom is the thing that we lack. That's the problem with us. Wisdom is what we lack, and that's why it's very difficult sometimes to accept this Christian way and to actually put it into practice. As far as James is concerned, after reading verse 2 to 4, what's the one thing that hinders Christians from actually taking it and putting it into practice? He will reply wisdom. That's why he put it in verse 5. The whole epistle is written by James. It has a certain unity. It has a certain cohesiveness. It's meant to be read one verse after the other, and you're meant to connect the themes in it. And when you read 2 to 4 and then verse 5, you've got to ask the question, why does he talk about that? Why does he bring wisdom next? What's the reason? And the reason is very simple. As far as James is concerned, this is the one thing that will keep us from putting this Christian way into practice. This is the one thing, and in it all other things are involved. So let me try to explain how it's a lack of wisdom that prevents us from embracing the Christian way taught in verse 2 to 4. Now, James says, know this and count it all joy. Right? Know some truth and count it all joy. When we try to go and put it into practice, and when the difficulty comes, the trial comes, and we try to do what James says, we're going to have a little bit of trouble counting it joy. I'm talking about most people. Most people will read this, they'll understand it, but when they go to put it to practice, they feel like, I'm not able to count it all joy. I'm able to count it a little bit joy maybe. Count it all joy, pure joy, only joy. That's a bit too extreme. This is too much. This is, impractical, they'll say. Right? Why are we not able to count it all joy even after we understand, even after we get it? We have to know the truth and then count it joy. Well, I'll tell you the reason simply. Maybe several reasons. One important reason is we are not that happy about the ending. We are not that happy about the ending. What do I mean by that? You see, James's entire encouragement depends on whether or not you are happy with the ending. What do I mean by that? James is basically saying, know that this present problem you are in will actually have a good ending. Know the ending, think about the ending, and count it all joy. That's what he's saying. Think about the ending and count it all joy. It's not going to always be like this. It's going to have a good ending. What is the good ending? The inside of you, something good is going to be produced. Patience, steadfastness, endurance. Not only that, it'll lead to a full development of character, nature. That's the good ending, right? He gave the ending to us. Now the problem is we are not that happy with the ending. Yeah, it sounds good, but it's not. That doesn't sound that great to Many of us sometimes. It's like a movie, These guys who make the movie, they put in so much thought and effort and money and all that. In the end, some people watch the movie, they don't like the ending. Have you seen that? When the ending is not good, it kind of spoils their joy, spoils their happiness. Here, what's happening is, we like the ending. Yeah, inside steadfastness and patience and all these qualities and character grows and develops and it sounds good. And yeah, character. But for that, should I struggle so much? We feel like, okay, the ending is good, but is it good enough? Is it worth going through this path to get to this ending? Let me give you an illustration. Imagine you're in the lockdown, always, at home. Your kids are just so sad, the state of kids, right? They've got to stay home. They can't go out and play sometimes and all this. And so finally you want to give your kids some relief. And you say, come, let's go. I want to take you somewhere good. I want to take you to a good place. And you get them all in the car, you put them in the car, and you say, I'm going to take you to a good place, and you start off, and you drive, and you hit some traffic, right? There's a lot of traffic, and it just starts getting very irritating, right? The kids are just irritated. They say, why did you pull us out? We were watching TV, Pulled us out, said we're going to a good place. And then you tell them, so far you haven't told them where you're going to take them. But then now you say, don't worry, don't get so irritated and frustrated. I'm going to take you to a real good place. Think about the good place. You know where I'm going to take you? I'm going to take you to the library. Library, that's what I said, yeah. I actually tried this on my son. You must have seen his face. It's just disappointment written all over it. Library? See? He was having some other good place in mind. When I said good place, he was thinking maybe it's a playground, maybe it's a mall, or maybe it's a ice cream shop, or maybe it's this or that. That's a good place. That's a good place. Library? What? For those good places, in his mind, he thinks it's worth it to endure all this obstacle and traffic and go and reach there. But library? What's happening is, that's how some Christians react when they hear James tell them where they're going. James is saying, count it all joy, my brothers, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. And people are listening, okay, where does this go? And then patience will result in you becoming perfect and lacking in nothing. And he's talking, when you realize he's talking about inward character mainly, that's the emphasis. You come to the ending and you say, you can't show a disappointing face like my son did, because now it's James and it's the Bible. You can't revolt against the ending. So you just say, yeah, amen, brother, The ending is good, but it's not that good according to some people. The ending is good, but is it good enough to cross all the obstacles? Is it good enough? Is it worth it to endure so much pain and hardship and all this for that? In the end, for my inward character to be developed and come to perfection. You see, just like the kids, the children have other destinations in mind. They don't see the value in a library. Their parents see the value of the library. Parents understand that library is worth the trouble. Kids don't, you see. What's the difference between the parents and the kids? It's wisdom. They lack wisdom. Kids have many good qualities, but wisdom is not one of them. Parents are grown, and as they grow, they develop. Wisdom is seeing the real value of things, esteeming things with its real value, seeing the true value of something, and esteeming it as high as it should be esteemed. Wisdom is able to look at two things and consider, okay, this is valuable. Wisdom is able to see that, know that. Just similar to that illustration, you have the parent and the kid, right? Here you have James and you have believers. James is like that parent. He's all, excited, right? We're going to the library. He sees the value of that. James is all excited because he sees the value of inward character. He sees the value of developing inward character and getting to spiritual maturity. He sees the value of a person becoming more and more like Jesus Christ. He sees the value of a person growing on the inside, right? In steadfastness, in patience, in love, in humility, in all these qualities on the inside. He sees the value of that. He's so excited about it. He says, guys, count it joy because of this great ending. Some believers are listening and going, Great ending? Is it really great? The, the reaction difference comes because of a difference in wisdom. James has grown in wisdom. Some of the believers hearing him have not grown in wisdom. They don't value the development and the perfection of inward character as much as James does. James places a very high premium on it, very high value on it, because he has wisdom, divine wisdom, Christian wisdom, eyes to see the way God wants you to see. And he sees this as very valuable, as worth all the trouble you have to cross to get there. The New Testament places a premium, very high premium on this matter. What matter? The development of inward character.